So James, let's do Joker, Folie, Deux, the sequel to Joker, Todd Phillips' Joker, 2019, which obviously was a huge success, a complete reimagination, rebranding of the Joker character, casting Joaquin Phoenix in a sort of break-off film not related to any of the existing universes that we'd seen on screen. Joaquin Phoenix won an Oscar for it. Also, isn't it the most successful R-rated movie of all time?
Is it?
Might change now,
Yeah,
I suppose.
it's up there.
But it was phenomenal.
Huge.
Or quote, fastest film to reach $1 billion. It broke some record.
Much better than expected.
Much better than expected. We
Probably critically as well, I think.
when we've spoken about it in the past, you and I kind of split. I'll actually hold my hands up because I'm a slave to my own rule. It's been 5 years.
Wow, yeah,
so
yeah.
I am due a rewatch
Yeah.
of it. And I know you rewatched it recently.
Yeah, I watched it, I want to say 3-4 months ago.
Yeah,
just
usually
ahead of
quite
time.
positively. I think it's always been, for me, just slightly overrated. I always thought there was nothing deeper happening with it. But anyway, 5-year rule. And going into this, I want to say that I did take on board what you were saying, which is that you made this point about how a lot of people who were at film school with Todd Phillips noted that this is the real Todd Phillips, not The Hangover, not the old school Todd Phillips who made those comedy movies, but this kind of side. So I definitely had that in my head. But anyway, we pick up 2 years after the events of Joker. Arthur Fleck, played by Joaquin Phoenix, is in Arkham Asylum. He is a prisoner there, being detained, awaiting the trial for the murders that he committed in the first film, for the 5 murders that he committed. He's overseen by a prison warden played by Brendan Gleeson. Always great to see.
Yeah,
Great, nice to have that.
He's got more lines than I thought.
Yeah, and his lawyer is Catherine Keener, also a good actor. No, great to see her in it. And he's sort of being prepped for the trial that is coming, a trial that is the prosecution of which is being led by a very young Harvey Dent. If you know your DC, you know who that is. And during his time at Arkham Asylum, he crosses paths with a member of the minimum security ward, which is Lee Quinzel, played by Lady Gaga, who they immediately strike up a connection. They have something in common. She recognizes in Arthur, a deeper need. Essentially, she recognizes that Joker is the guy that he should be, and the person that people need. Even though the lawyers and the psychiatrists are all telling him, you have a split personality, you need to get away from the Joker side of yourself, and hold on to the Arthur side of it. Builds up, and very quickly we're in trial. That is the main focus of the film. This sort of legal procedure, his interaction with Lee Quinzel, the sort of media hype around the circus, and at the heart of it, as ever, is Joaquin Phoenix in an incredibly skeletal, emaciated, physical state. I think that's all plot-wise that we want to go into. Obviously, this is going to be a spoiler-free review.
Yeah, spoiler-free review.
So anyway, Joker, Folie, Deux.
Interestingly, you and I, when we were queuing up to go and see it, we're just about to head in. We're sort of rushing, trying to get through, and you said, "James, what do you think ahead of this?" And I said, "You know what, George? I really don't know. It could go either way." But I think in my head, I thought it would definitely be a couple of things. I knew it would be gorgeous to look at, and it is. It's very beautifully shot. Lawrence Sher cinematography and his use of colour still is fantastic. And I said, I know it'd have good performances. But what I really didn't expect to happen was that this film would bore me. And that is what's so surprising about it, is that I was bored and a little bit disappointed at the narrative direction it went down. I actually think the structure of a trial really constrains the narrative of this film, and I felt that it didn't actually enhance the story and create a sequel to let's be honest, the origin story of this Joker that I think this film needed. The musical additions, while beautiful to look at and cinematic, and everyone's having a good time dancing and posing and getting dressed up, and everything looks great in a spotlight, ultimately I found the script to be very, very thin. And if you were to take the musical numbers out of this, I really don't think you'd have anything left. I think it ends on a note that's very predictable and nothing-y, and I think Joker at the end of this film is actually in almost the exact same place that he is at the end of the first one. And I think Joaquin Phoenix, though always complex and over the top, I think there's a sense that he's a little bit sort of clutching at straws for ideas, and that some of the takes we were seeing were maybe one of many odd takes that he presented. And I think it's a shame, because I do think the first film, although I take on board a lot of people's criticism when they say that what you see is what you get, and it maybe lacks a sort of duality that I think you'd want from that film. What the first film does, which is what makes it really interesting is that it's very provocative. It has a scene in it which I think is one of the most violent scenes we've ever seen in a comic book film. It's really provocative, and I think the fact that Joker is going to commit an act of violence in Joker 1 is a foregone conclusion. You know that's going to happen, and when you watch that play out, and that moment for Arthur Fleck is his heroic moment, that creates a really uncomfortable feeling for those watching it, and the joke of what you get when you have somebody who's been abandoned by society. You get what you effing deserve. That moment of catharsis for him and a little bit for the audience is very unsettling, because we've seen it happen, and it's a commentary on society, and whether or not that's an accident, I nonetheless think that makes the film very interesting. This film just didn't offer any other element for me, and I think it's a real disappointment.
I agree. It's actually a shame to do an episode where two of the most boring films I've seen this year have been in the same week. We saw within 24 hours each other. But unlike Wolves, my issue with Joker is different. And actually, when I talked about Wolves, I said I didn't overall have any frustration with it. I got more frustrated with Joker because I think it's built on different foundations. And so my issue with Joker 2 is that my overwhelming sense from it is that it fundamentally doesn't want and doesn't need to exist. Yeah. I always thought that with the first one. I think Todd Phillips made a breakaway movie that no one expected, and people got really excited about it, which is great. And in a way, it was kind of Todd Phillips's two fingers up to the studio industrial process of making superhero movies, and it was great that Warner Brothers got on board with it.
It was refreshing to watch.
And now he's been co-opted and sucked into producing a sequel to the very thing that was a film against that. I don't think, looking also at Todd Phillips and Joaquin at the premiere, which we went to, I don't think Todd Phillips really was creatively interested in making a sequel, and what comes across in the film, definitely, I don't think Joaquin Phoenix is creatively interested. And what you get in Joaquin Phoenix's performance is a restlessness, a directionlessness, and I think it's so apparent. There's one particular scene where he just decides to use 3 different accents, and I get it. You're joking, you're being aloof, you're being different, but in our audience, all of us are sort of thinking, but what is this going towards? And that tells me, Joaquin, you are just bored and restless and
like
thinking,
a half-baked
I'm going to try this.
Idea.
Yeah, and I actually think the whole making the film a musical was Joaquin sort of putting pressure on and going, oh, if we have to do it, you know what? Why don't we make it a musical? That'll be interesting.
We don't know he said that, but
no, we don't know. But
it's
a complete conjecture. This is my theory, but I'm also, to give it context, it's the stories we've heard of Todd Phillips saying that they would have a whole day of shooting set up. Joaquin would turn up to set, and he would say, actually, what if we do this differently? And that speaks to me as someone who's not invested and for me, it's also it's ephemeral. It comes through in this performance. I just don't think he's locked in and engaged in the same way. I also think that happened in Napoleon, and that Joaquin was like, he was just doing his own movie. Yeah. He didn't really care about the rest of it, and that's kind of what's happening here. I agree. I think it's very shallow. My issue that really actually bugs me is like a fundamental storytelling issue, which is, what does Arthur want?
Yeah.
Does he want to be in Arkham? Does he want to be out of Arkham? Does he want to be dead? Does he want to be alive?
Does he want to be a villain now? Does he want to... Yeah.
Really basic, dramatic questions that are the building blocks of all drama.
And those questions about what the Joker wants are part of his genius, part of his fascination. That is an interesting question to ask.
And there's this sort of very navel-gazy, intense, shadowy scene shot with Lee Quinzel, with Lady Gaga's character. And I just thought, in this scene, I remember thinking, we have missed the point here, haven't we? We have, not only have you missed the point of kind of your first film, but we've gone so far now with forgetting the fact that this is based off of a DC character. Like, you can give your vision, you can give your spin, but like, let's not kid ourselves here, guys. Like, you have good source material, but like, use it. And I think they're trying to break away so much. It really didn't work. And I think, I agree, the great tragedy is that this seemingly novel idea to throw in musical numbers, the really sad thing is that they add nothing. They add absolutely nothing. For a start, most of the songs aren't original.
No.
They're whipped out the Warner Brothers back catalogue, which is fine, whatever. But every time a song number would start, I would go, oh,
they all look great for the trailer.
Look great for the trailer. Yeah. There's one
beautiful sets. Gaga's doing her thing, sparkly dress.
There's one number that kind of works in the courtroom, and I actually think in that sequence, it's the only time you get to see proper Joker, mad Joker, maniacal Joker. It's
kind of a like razzle dazzle them from Chicago moment, or both reached for the gun. Like, that's an insult to that.
And
like,
I actually think
coming up to that,
if they just had that one number and not sold the rest of the film as being a musical, it would have been quite novel. It would have been quite a stroke of genius. But really, it's,
the main crux this film tries to engage with is, or the main crux of the trial is. The argument is, does Arthur Fleck have a split personality? If he did, therefore, would that indicate that he is mentally unwell and could be, revoked of his crime? And that just isn't properly addressed or made interesting. No. I think, considering the way Joker ended, he became a hero in that world to a mob of people. I think this film should have taken him out of the court drama and the prison within the first act. Yeah. And it should have then been, what does this man who's been lost by society, who's committed an act of violence, who's actually been like enabled and liberated and activated by violence, what does he now want to do in Gotham? What does he have to say? It should have been more of a study of the world. The first film takes place in Arthur's delusion, and that becomes increasingly uncomfortable as the film goes on. That's part of why it sits with you in a very strange way. But this should have evolved that.
And what I enjoyed in the first one, though, is that Arthur's... we're on the streets of Gotham. We're pounding the pavement. He's on the subway. And, like, I couldn't help but feel in this, you see the crowds at the courtroom, and you hear the shouts outside. But essentially, our character is isolated, literally isolated for a lot of this this
prison
movie.
On an island.
And I started to think I would really like to know about the media mania, the growing social discontent that has been lit by Arthur's presence. And also I would like to know about Harvey Dent building this case against him, because Harvey Dent, played by this British actor, and he was very charming actually. I think it was pretty good. It's kind of very suave Harvey Dent. I started to think I'd like to know about that story. Just having some guy await a trial and repeat all the stuff that happened in the first film is not interesting. The whole film, really, as you say, could be the first act to a greater film.
And the whole Joker's cronies thing is always interesting in Batman. And in the first one, they are aware of him, and they're all dressed up like him, and they help him escape the police. And it's part of mobilizing this mob accidentally. That's fun. I just think that the decision structurally for the film was a mistake, and therefore you go, well, this actually, when you think about it, the sequel didn't have to happen. It would have been much more impactful as a standalone film that sat there on its own, going, listen, what a strange film with a brilliant performance that really subverted expectations for what you could do within a comic book film. And just surprisingly dull.
That's what's
really.
I could never thought I would say that. Even though
it was my least. Really, what I didn't think would happen. I didn't think I'd be bored. I thought maybe I wouldn't like X, Y, and Z.
James and I are always paying attention to the audience we're seeing it with in their engagement, and you can hear it in the room.
And this audience these premier audiences will definitely show the very best of a film, but because they're very engaged and if they've come here specifically for the day, I also think it becomes very obvious when people are not with a film. It's like when we saw Bad Boys 4, that film really had the audience, and it massively improved that film. People are laughing and cheering, and it enhanced the best parts of that film.
You'd be surprised to hear us say that Bad Boys 4 was better than Joker Folie Deux.
A better sequel than Joker Folie Deux.
And people, when we were leaving, some people were fuming. Some people were just
I saw,
really baffled and confused about it. And I think that's what frustrates me. You try and build in this musical element. You're trying to be innovative. It just inherently, deep down, fundamentally, doesn't want to exist.
I think it's done great things for the cinematography's showreel.
Yeah, beautiful. That's great.
I think ultimately, it's just a bit of a disappointment. I think I had 3 friends message me after they saw that we were at the premiere, and 3 of them was like, "Oh, how's Joker 2? How's Joker 2?" And I was like, "Mate, it's kind of dull." And they're like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, by all means, go see it, but I actually just found it very boring and unnecessary." Which is because I think a lot of people, and they were like, "Oh, I love 2019." And I was like, "Yeah, I like 2019. It's great." I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed. Yeah. But as always, we would love to hear your thoughts. If maybe you got a little bit more out of it than we did. As always, send in your reviews to hello@popkitchenpodcast.com.
It is a weird feeling to review 2 dull duff movies for you guys back to back, which on the face of it, both films should have been much better. Yeah. Both films that scream star power, that scream cinema, and it's been a strange week.
And I'm disappointed that they didn't rise to the occasion, because with Joker 1, nobody really expected you to be that good, and I don't think there was a big expectation that it would resonate with audiences. And there's something quite exciting about a great creative partnership, many great creative partnerships, where you go, hang on, now we have the world's attention, now we have the approval and the budget. What can we do now? I always think that's a really exciting thing for a sequel, and to see them just not stick the landing, or not take what I think is the most interesting part of Joker 1 and subvert again. Really double down on what it is that people are. What is your morbid curiosity to go back to this character if you found it really difficult to watch the first time? Play on that. Use that as I can already in my head start to think of like reasons why I'd want to really provoke an audience who found Joker 1 interesting or entertaining. Or if you're rooting, I think if you're watching that film and you're rooting for Arthur Fleck, the really interesting question is why.
Yeah.
So just disappointing.
Guys, as ever, let us know your thoughts to hello@popkitchenpodcast.com. We'd really appreciate it. Those are our
Moving
thoughts on
on.
it. Moving on
Moving
on
on
to the emails.